Welcome to Village Church Connections. I'm David Pavey. There was an interesting anecdote in the British newspaper some years ago regarding a certain Carl Compton, a handsome 23-year-old who was earning only about $150 per week as a clerk in an electrical appliances store in Blackpool, England. From one day to the next, however, Carl stepped into the national limelight when his £1 ticket won him the equivalent of $15 million on the lottery, one of the largest awards ever won in the United Kingdom. The media referred to him as one of Britain's luckiest, the country's most eligible bachelor, and every girl's dream. His face was on the front pages of the newspapers with his mother, Pat, vowing to protect her son from female fortune hunters. Carl said he would buy a new home for his family and one for himself and look for a plain girl to marry who was just like Mum. But first priority went to a new motorcycle and a Porsche Carrera 911, priced about $45,000, that he would get immediately. Not bad for a $1 lottery ticket. The fairy tale's glow was short-lived, however. The very next day it turned out that the lottery millionaire had served 9 months in jail 3 years previously for disfiguring Jason Edwards. During a pub brawl, he had repeatedly shoved a broken glass beer bottle into the face of Edwards, who was then 18 years old. And he did this while his friends held the victim. The disclosure was enough to deflate the exuberance that much of the country felt over the happy story. Now the same newspapers that published pictures of Mr. Compton posing with attractive women, hugging his mother, riding a red motorcycle, called him the Lotto jailbird. The victim's family raised the prospect of suing for a share of the winnings as compensation, arguing that it was unfair for Mr. Compton to sip champagne and talk of spending his sizable new fortune while Mr. Edwards had permanent scars across his nose and cheeks and lips. Mr. Edwards, the disfigured victim, complained that it was obscene that this man was swanning around London, drinking champagne and pretending he was a good man. Why should he, the disfigured victim, have to continue to work for a living, while Carl Compton could live off the interest of his winnings without ever working another day in his life? The British tabloid press went into high gear. People couldn't help feeling that only deserving people should win the lottery. Now, I have my own views on the morality of the lottery, of course, but I do know that Mr. Compton didn't deserve to win nearly $15 million, but he won it anyway. But you know, I didn't deserve to be accepted by a holy God. But he saw my imperfect track record and demonstrated his great grace by accepting me just as I was when I confessed my need and trusted Jesus as my Savior. The Apostle Paul said that when we were enemies, we were reconciled to God by the death of his Son. We were not just undeserving, but enemies of God. Now that's grace. Mercy is not getting what we deserve, but grace, that's getting what we don't deserve. When we come to God confessing our failures, admitting that we don't deserve his favor, and accepting the sacrifice of Jesus the Messiah on the cross as our means of finding peace with God, in his mercy he forgives us, and by his grace he saves us from the consequences of our sin. Undeserving as we are, we become unshackled, set free to live a life that is pleasing to him. In computer terms, God sees our failures, selects all, hits the delete key, and gives us a new start with a clean document. As far as the east is from the west, wrote the psalmist, So far has he removed our transgressions from us. Oh, and by the way, Carl Compton learned from his mistake and from winning the fortune that he didn't deserve. He married a high school flame, and now he has 2 sons. He built a 5-bedroom Gothic-style mansion on the coast in Lancashire that quickly grew in value, and he invested heavily in bricks and mortar, doubling his net worth in short order. He's living sensibly now, having abandoned his quest for expensive cars and lavish tailor-made suits. He sports a T-shirt much of the time, and he's settled for a Volkswagen Golf. And when God extends to us his undeserved favor, we are introduced to a purpose-driven life, seeking to honor the one who showed us grace. Do you really feel you deserve God's favor? Better think again. And thank you for tuning in once again to Village Church Connections.